Now here on the back side, we're talking about function notation. Okay, we're going to see this all of the time, f of x. Okay, it looks really scary. F of x is just a fancy way of saying y equals. Okay, f of x. You say of when you see those parentheses. F of x. Let's look at what this means. So they're going to give you an equation normally. They'll say something like f of x equals 2x plus 5. And then they'll say find f of 5. And so what did they do? Well, it said f of x, and now it says f of 5. What did they literally do in that problem? They plugged in 5. Where the x was, they took out an x and put in a 5. It is telling you exactly what they want you to do. They want you to take out the x, where this was, and put a 5 in its place, and then simplify to get an answer. Okay, f of 5 then is 15. It means when the x is 5, when you plug in a 5, you're going to get 15 as your output. That's what all of function notation means. If you can understand that it is all a plugging in thing, you're going to be good with this. All right, so let's look at these examples. For these first two problems, you got f of x equals that thing, negative 3x plus 5. The first one says find f of negative 2. So if I'm finding f of negative 2, Leslie, what's that asking us to do here? Plug negative 2 in for x. So it's going to be f of negative 2 equals whatever you get when you plug negative 2 in right there. So it's going to be negative 3. Instead of x, she's going to plug in negative 2 plus 5. And we just got to do some multiplication. Negative 3 times negative 2 is 6, plus 5 is 11. So what does f of negative 2 equal to? It's 11. It's just what you get when you plug it in. Everybody good on the first one? Second one, same idea. It says now find f of x plus f of negative 2. So same f of x. That problem still applies. We are trying to find what we get when we do this. F of x. What am I going to plug in for? It doesn't give me a number there. What are we plugging in for f of x? The equation. It tells me right here that f of x is this. So if it asks me for f of x, I'm writing that right there, negative 3x plus 5. That's what f of x means. It says right there, f of x equals that. So I'm going to write that in its spot. Plus f of negative 2. So plus f of negative 2. How can I find f of negative 2? I already found it, right? It means take negative 2 and plug it in. Well, I just did that. F of negative 2 is 11. So instead of this, I can plug in 11. I'm finding it. That means I'm just simplifying it. I'm not doing anything crazy here, just simplifying a little bit. So I'm taking 5 plus 11 and getting 16. Again, notice that there's no magical equal signs. There's nowhere that I just threw an equal sign in. That's where kids get in trouble. They automatically throw an equal sign equal to 0. No, there's no equals. You're just simplifying on these problems. Questions on A and B? The next one, I copied this directly from the College Board website. They said this is, all right, you are trying to take the SAT. In order to pass the SAT, you need to know function notation. Okay, you have to understand this exact problem. If they say f of x equals x plus 2 to the x power, you got to be able to figure out what f of 5 is. It's directly from their website. I copied and pasted. So if they want us to find f of 5, what are they wanting you to do with this equation? Plug 5 in. See if you can do that real quick. Plug 5 into that equation and see if you can solve it. Okay, f of 5 equals, instead of x, what am I putting in there? 5 plus 2 to the 5th. The 5th goes as my exponent. Okay, all I'm doing is plugging in 5. There's nothing fancy about that. That's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to be able to plug in. Once we've done that, now we're just solving. So it's 5 plus 32. It's 2 to the 5th, which means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. It's 32. 5 plus 32. 37 is my final answer there. That's what they were looking for you to get. Just a matter of plugging in and knowing what exponents are. Questions on that one? Letter D says, given f of x equals this thing, Our job is to find 3 f of 2. Now we're getting a little bit different. 3 f of 2. So let's write that down, what 3 f of 2 means. 3. Are we plugging anything in for 3? It's just a number, so we are going to write the number 3. When it's right next to f of 2 like that, what does it mean you're doing with 3 and f of 2? You're multiplying them, right? If they're next to each other, it means multiply. So this means 3 times whatever I get for f of 2. I need to do that whole thing. I need to figure out what f of 2 is. Okay, so if I want to find out what f of 2 is, Mariette, what do I want to do to find f of 2? Plug it in. I'm just plugging 2 in. 2 goes in for x. So inside of parentheses here, I'm doing the problem. 3 plugging in for x, 2 minus 4. I need to find this first, and then I'm going to multiply that answer by 3. That's what that means here. I'm plugging in 2 to figure out what that is, and then I'm going to end up multiplying by 3 in the end. So 3 times 2 is 6, minus 4 is 2. And then I'm multiplying that whole answer by 3. Final answer is 6. Questions there? Okay. That's where it gets a little bit trickier. Let's go down below. This is where we're really going to put our focus today. So here, they're telling you what f of x equals. They're telling you what g of x equals. You're getting 2 different equations. We're going to ask questions about both of them. The first one says f of negative 1. Go ahead and try to figure out what f of negative 1 is. That's not crazy tough. What are you doing with negative 1? Plug it into which equation? The f equation. Plug negative 1 into that f equation, see what you get. So when you plug in here, what do we have to do when we plug in? This is the place we'll make our mistake on this one. Anytime we plug in, you got to plug in parentheses. Okay, so that's where you would make your mistake. I'm taking negative 1 and I'm squaring that whole thing. What happens when you take negative 1 and you square it? This is positive 1. And then these 2 things being multiplied together is negative 3. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Be careful there. You have to say positive 1. If you got negative 4 for your answer, you didn't do order of operations correctly. You got to go square first. And the second one, a little bit different. G of negative x. Okay? Inside of parentheses, it said g of x. What do they want us to plug in for x instead now? Negative x. So for this thing right here, I'm going to plug negative x in its spot. So my problem is going to be this, negative 4. Instead of x, I'm going to plug something in. I am plugging in negative x. And then I'm going to simplify. What happens when I take negative 4 times negative x? 4x plus 2. I'm done. That's all I had to do. I could put it in and see what I could do with it. I couldn't do a ton. You don't have to. No, that is just telling you what it is. It is telling you the function is that. All right. In the end, if you wrote g of negative x equals that, because that's what we got for our answer, that's okay. But people want to always do that first. That is just telling you its name. All right. That's like saying Mr. Schwanekamp equals. Okay. That's my name. That's where I'm plugging into. It's telling me where to start. Okay. Let's look down at the next one. So there's no equal sign there. You're plugging in. Negative 2 g of x. Okay? Negative 2 g of x. Where is that negative 2? Just negative. That? Cool. Negative f of x. What do you think we're doing there? What's in front of that f of x? Negative 1. So I'm taking negative 1 times, because it's just in front, times what? That whole thing, x squared plus 3x. What do I want to do when I plug in that f of x there? I'm multiplying that whole thing. So that whole thing needs to be multiplied by negative 1. Everything in that problem is getting a negative 1. So my new problem, I'm just distributing. Negative x squared. And then negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. That is negative f of x. I'm just multiplying by a negative 1. Let's look at the last one. F of x plus 1. f of x plus 1, what are you doing? Plugging in x plus 1 for x. This is what's going in to this problem right here. Which one does it go in for? Which x does it go in for? Both, for that one and for that one. So my problem becomes this, x plus 1 all squared plus 3 times x plus 1. Plugging in for that whole thing. Try and simplify that. Think back to bell work to help you out a little bit, but try and simplify that thing now that we've written it out. Look at your bell work. That gave you a good example, but then see from there if you can figure that out the rest of the way. What do you got to do with this x plus 1 when I square it? It means x plus 1 times x plus 1. You're foiling that thing out. I'm multiplying together. So x times x is x squared. X times 1 is 1x. 1 times x is 1x. And 1 times 1 is 1. Combine like terms in the middle. I get that right there. Am I done with this problem? What else do I got to deal with? I got to distribute up here. I still got this 3x plus 1, so it's really 3x plus 3. Now am I done? I still can combine like terms. I've got x squared plus 2x and 3x is 5x plus 4. That's your final answer. X squared plus 5x plus 4. Questions there? One last thing I want you to do before you leave. Let's try and do these two. So I want you to do f of negative 3x and 3 of f of 2. See if you can do those two problems before we leave. F of negative 3x, that means I'm plugging a negative 3x in for that thing right there. So it's negative 3. Instead of that x, I'm plugging in a negative 3x plus 4. Multiply these together. What am I going to get there? 9x plus 4. There's my first answer. The next one is 3f of 2. So I'm taking 3 times whatever f of 2 is. So I just need to figure out what f of 2 is. So that just means I'm plugging 2 in right there for x. So it's going to be negative 3 times 2 plus 4. Do what's in parentheses first. So I'm doing this part. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Plus 4 is negative 2. But I still got to multiply that by the 3 in front. You should have gotten negative 6 for that answer.